Hello everyone, welcome to Monday night. As we know, I always get on a couple minutes before because I want to make sure that I'm all on Facebook. I can see what's going on. So welcome. As we know, as I'm doing this, I talk about this day in history. And there was so much today in history, I didn't even know which ones to say. But some really good ones that I thought were pretty cool were in 1913, Richard Nixon was born. And we want to put this on mute. There we go. Okay. And Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin was born as well. And Dave Matthews from Dave Matthews Band was also born as well today. He was born in 1967. Crystal Gale, I don't know if anybody knows her. She's a country singer and she's got the hair that goes all the way down. It is so long. She was born today in 1951. Let's see. In 2002, Michael Jackson got the Artist of the Century Award during the American Music Awards, I think it was. And let's see what else happened. Steve Jobs in 2007 unveiled the first iPhone. I can't believe it's been now like 10 years, and it feels like it's been forever that I have been actually using an iPhone. I am an iPhone fanatic. I've got everything. Mac, iPhone. So, yeah, 10 years. Wow, that's a long time. Let's see what else. In 1768, the first modern circus was actually staged in London, which I thought was really, really cool. And let's see, in 1493, Christopher Columbus, during his discoveries, I think it must have been down Florida area, he mistaken a manatee and thought it was a mermaid. Okay, I thought that was pretty funny and pretty interesting. So remember, if you're here, please make sure that you comment below. I haven't really kind of been seeing them. I've been trying to see them. I do sometimes see them, but I haven't really been seeing them too much. And I asked my fellow live streamers, and I got a little bit advice on how to kind of do it so I can actually see the comments. So hopefully that'll work this evening. So it is 8 p.m. Welcome everyone to Monday night Women's Health on the Go live stream. I hope that this weekend was good for you. It was a little sad for me. My Giants lost, so it was a little sad, but you know, until next year, it's all going to be good. So Women's Health on the Go, we provide telemedicine video appointments for women who can't get to their gynecologist. If they have a simple bacterial infection, UTI, need a prescription for birth control, and you can't get to your provider or you don't have one, we have all these kind of great appointments that you can do it from the comforts of your own home. So make sure you check out our website, womenshealthonthego.com. And if you need an appointment, make sure you book it. If not, if you know someone that does, please make sure that you share either this feed, make sure that you follow this feed, or share womenshealthonthego.com website. So let's see, we don't want to forget, this is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. So make sure that if you haven't gotten your pap smear anytime soon, make sure that you call your healthcare provider and see if you're due so that we can help prevent cervical cancer. Let's see, tonight we're going to talk about BV, bacterial vaginosis. But I first wanted to answer a question I actually got last week, and I thought it would be a really good idea to answer it here. And the question is, can I get an STD or infection from sitting on a toilet seat? And the answer, for the most part, is not really. It would be highly unlikely and probably rare that that would even happen. Most things that if they are going to live outside the body, let's just think about us girls, right? Let's think about when we go to the bathroom, okay? Let's take trichomonas, okay? Trichomonas is a infection that the trichomonads, which are trichomonas, are living in your vaginal discharge, okay? Can you pass it to someone? You sharing towels? Yes, because if I take a towel and I rub it down in myself and the towel's still wet and moist, and then I give it to my girlfriend and she goes down there and does the same thing, yes, that can happen. But the likelihood of me sitting on the toilet and rubbing my vaginal discharge on the toilet seat and then me getting up and you coming and sitting down on it a little later and getting that infection is it's just highly unlikely if you kind of think about it. Especially, I hope that when you're using a bathroom in public, you do what I do, which I'm maybe a little bit obsessive, but I take a wad of toilet paper, I wipe it kind of down without touching it, then I put toilet paper down and then I hover over it to make sure that I don't really even come in contact. But the likelihood of you getting infection from sitting on a toilet is really highly unlikely. There are some infections that can live outside the body for a while, but if we really think about it, the chances of you getting it from sitting on a toilet seat is very, very minimal. So if you have any further questions about that, please make sure you post down below. All right, so let's talk about bacterial vaginosis, better known as BV. I wanted to talk about this because I think it's it's one of the most common reasons why people actually go and visit the gynecologist. And a lot of times when people have the infection, there's likelihood that it'll kind of keep reoccurring and reoccurring. So it becomes a bit of a problem. So let's first talk about the vagina. Now, the vagina has bacteria in it. Everyone has normal bacteria, just like we have gut bacteria, we have vaginal gut bacteria. And they're lactobacilli, and they're normal, okay? They are what we call oxygenated rich bacteria, okay? And you have bacteria in your vagina, it's supposed to be there. It helps keep it healthy. What happens is, through various and many, many different ways can you get a bacterial infection, but you'll get exposed to abnormal bacteria that is not oxygenated rich, such as Gardnerella, which is what BV is commonly associated with. And then if that bad bacteria kind of overgrows, then you get bacterial vaginosis. It is not necessarily an infection, okay? It's more that you have an overgrowth of a bad bacteria that is not necessarily good for our vagina, and we end up getting this bacterial vaginosis. We can get this a whole bunch of different ways. We can get it from if I have bacteria on my hands and I touch myself. If you're using antibacterial soap when you shower, because if you think about antibacterial soap, you're washing away the good bacteria, therefore it's a lot easier for the bad bacteria to grow. Can you have it? Is it an STD? It's not necessarily an STD, but it is something that we can get from having sex with someone. If you think about it, if I have bacteria in my vagina, they have bacteria, it's a normal part of them, and if I have sexual relations with them and their bacteria overgrow my good bacteria, then you can end up having a bacterial infection. A lot of the times, if we have a new sexual partner, the biggest time that the biggest time you have it is when you have sex with someone for the first time without a condom. You know, your body's just not accustomed to that person, and you can easily get a bacterial infection that way. And that's very, very common, that typically when people have a new sexual partner and they come in, they'll end up having a bacterial infection. So, it's not necessarily an STD. It's not something that if I have it, you got to get your partner to get treated, because regardless, if you were to treat your partner, there's it's not going to help you at all. It's not going to help you prevent you from getting a bacterial infection again. Condom use definitely will help you from getting a bacterial infection. But then sometimes we're very sensitive, because if you think about it, condoms have lots of stuff on them. They've got, you know, spermicides and lubricants and all this kind of stuff. And if we become irritated to it, then we can also get a bacterial infection. There's just so many ways that we can get bacterial vaginosis, that it's like almost too many to count here, but it's very, very common. The symptoms of it, they might not be anything. Sometimes people don't even have any symptoms at all. A lot of the times, sometimes when we do a pap smear, we actually, when we get a report, you can have normal cells, and sometimes they can see fungal organisms, and sometimes they can see changes consistent with bacterial vaginosis. So if people are asymptomatic, we typically don't treat them. But most of the time when people have symptoms, the symptoms that they're going to have is a yellow, grayish, what we call homogeneous, which is like a creamy kind of discharge, almost like a milk kind of discharge. It could be a little bit, it could be a lot. And the biggest complaint people have is a fishy odor. It will definitely give off it's basically just a fishy odor. Just like when sometimes people have yeast infections, sometimes they smell like a sweet smell. And that's just the yeast kind of growing down there. So those typically are the symptoms. There are some times when people can have pelvic discomfort with it as well. And there is always that risk of when you have a bacterial infection, just like when you're exposed to chlamydia or gonorrhea, the infection kind of going up and ending up having an infection in your uterus and your ovaries. And that will end up what we call PID, pelvic inflammatory disease. And if you have that, you'll be in a lot of pain, you'll be in a lot of discomfort, you'll be running to the doctor for definitely. It's not very often that people end up with PID, I'm thinking BID, which is twice a day, no, PID, pelvic inflammatory disease, but that is a possibility. So if you are having any vaginal odor, if you are having a discharge that is yellow and creamy, or you're even having pelvic like discomfort when you're having sexual relations, it's definitely one of the things that could possibly be going on is that you have a bacterial infection. How is it diagnosed? A good way and very easy way to do a home testing is basically to go to the bath, go in the shower, take a shower, and using like a harsh kind of soap, which not that I'm saying don't use an antibacterial soap, but sometimes those kind of soaps are really good. And the reaction, if you wash yourself with one of those kind of soaps, that you may get what we call an amine reaction, which it'll increase the fishy odor by like 500. So if you're not quite sure, if you have a fishy odor, there's definitely a likelihood you have a bacterial infection. But if you're having a discharge and you're not really quite sure what it is, that's just one way that you can do it. It's not 100% foolproof, but it's one thing that you can definitely do. And then there's a lot of these home testing kits that you can get now. It has to do with a lot of the pH level of your vagina. The normal pH level of a vagina is kind of neutral. It's like 3.5 to 4.5. And when you have a bacterial infection, that pH level is going to increase a lot. The problem is that there's other things that can cause your pH level to go up, such as using feminine products, which I really try to tell people to avoid using those things. I'm not really quite sure why women want to have their vagina smelling like a summer breeze or a fresh meadow, and that's another whole conversation I can have. I have a video about that, about how we give off a natural odor that is actually sexually pleasing to our mate. It's I can go off the whole thing about this, but it's something in our body when we're ovulating. We don't realize that we're doing this, but our moves may be a little bit more sexy, and our discharge will be different, and then our bodies will be giving off an odor. Our down below will be giving off an odor, trying to attract a mate. Because if you think about it, your body wants to get pregnant no matter whether you want to or not. So I always tell people to encourage people to not use these vaginal hygiene products that have you smelling like a summer breeze and a fresh meadow, just to be natural. But also these things have chemicals in them which can be irritating to the vaginal area, and you can end up getting a vaginal infection, and it could also change the pH level. Semen level, the pH level is pretty elevated, so that can cause the pH to be elevated. And also when you have your period, your blood, your menstrual blood has a high pH level. So, there's many things that can indicate if you have a high pH level, but also a bacterial infection as well. So typically, if you were to have one, if you didn't have these kind of little home testing kits, you go to the provider. The provider, either depending on the setup that they have in their office, I have a microscope, so I'm able to take a sample of the discharge. I can check the pH level on a pH piece of paper, pH paper, and then also I can look under the microscope to actually look at the cells. And when you see the cells, that you have what's called clue cells, and it's just if you think about a clean normal cell is a cell with a little tiny nucleus in the middle of it. And when you have a bacterial infection, the only way that I can explain it is it's almost like there's an explosion inside of it, and you can't really see that nucleus, but there's all these little kind of dots, because it's all like just little bacteria attached to the cells. And that's typically how you can get diagnosed inside an office, or sometimes providers don't actually have those capabilities. Sometimes they just look, and they've been doing it for so many years, they know, or they'll actually do a culture and send it off to the lab. So it really just depends on how your provider is kind of set up. Now, treating it, I think that the most important thing when it comes to treating, whether you're going to do it naturally or whether you're going to get a prescription from a provider, is that you want to rebuild that good bacteria. When you take, so there's a couple of different antibiotics that you can take if you got a prescription to take care of a bacterial infection. One of them is metronidazole, which you can take that orally, which is taking it twice a day for 7 days, but you cannot absolutely drink alcohol with it because you'll probably get nauseous and throw up. And I typically always, when people come in and get treated for it, I always say, okay, listen, I know me, I need to have my beer at the end of the day to relax. If that's you, this is not the type of, treatment that you want. So because you can get a reaction to it. And then there's metronidazole gel that you put in at night for 5 nights. And then there is another antibiotic called clindamycin, which you can get these ovules that you put in for 3 nights, and that's vaginal as well. Now, when you do this, when we talk about antibiotic use, even if you're taking antibiotics, whatever it is that you're taking it for, there's a lot of conversations that are going on right now about our microbiome in our stomach and about the bacteria that's in our stomach. And the way that we've been doing antibiotics for so long now, and unfortunately, when we take antibiotics, we not only kill the infection that's going on in our body, but it also kills good bacteria. And there is the theory that when you're killing all that good bacteria, even in your gut, they're more likelihood to end up with other medical problems. And it's all about rebuilding your microbiome and eating fermented foods when it comes to our gut, like as sauerkraut and kefir. There's lots of different, and then like yogurt, they all have good bacteria to help rebuild our intestines. But you also got to think about when you treat vaginally, you're getting rid of that good bacteria, that lactobacilli that I was talking about earlier. And I believe that one of the major reasons why women they get treated for it, and then 4, 5, 6 weeks later, they're back and they have another infection. And it's really common that women keep getting it reoccurring for a while. And I think that's because of the fact that we're not really rebuilding that good bacteria. We're just getting rid of the Gardnerella bacteria, but we're not rebuilding the oxygenated, rich bacteria to make it more of a friendly and neutral environment so that our vaginas can be nice and happy. So that being said, I think that it's really important that we take vaginal probiotics when we're also getting treated for, even if we do it naturally, and I'll go over some ways that you can do it naturally, but when you're taking these antibiotics, I think it's really important that you take a vaginal probiotics. I know that we all have heard about probiotics, they have them for our stomachs, which I was telling you a little bit about why, but there's also ones that are just focused on the vagina. And it's really important. When you go to any kind of natural health food stores, if you say, I need a vaginal probiotic, they're going to know exactly what they are. And you can take those vaginal probiotics orally if you want. I typically tell my patients, why put it here when you want it down there? You can absolutely take the capsules before you go to bed at night and just put one high up inside the vagina. And just like when you take it orally, the capsule will dissolve and the vaginal probiotics will, they'll do their stuff inside your vagina. And they'll help build that up. Typically, if someone's doing the vaginal gel for 5 days, I usually say do a vaginal probiotic for like a week after. If they're doing the oral medication, then I just say, well, do the vaginal probiotic while you're taking the antibiotic and a little bit after it as well, to help kind of build that up. And sometimes people too, if they're having reoccurring vaginal bacterial vaginosis, I actually will tell them, well, it all depends. There's so many things that I tell people when it comes to BV, because there's so much to talk about when it comes to it. But one of the things is sometimes people do notice it, after they always have sex. So I'm like, all right, you know what? So on the night that you have sex, just take a vaginal probiotic and put it inside the vagina before you go to bed at night. And, sometimes just doing that the night after having sex, or that night having sex, it takes care of it. There's another thing, which I'm going to go over into, which I'll sort of go right into natural ways to take care of it, is sometimes I have people do boric acid as well. Now, there's so many ways to put this. So boric acid, okay, first off, we got to make sure that we talk about boric acid for 1 minute. If you were to get boric acid, I definitely say make sure you go to the health food store and get health grade boric acid. As crazy as this is going to sound, boric acid also kills insects and rodents, okay? So you don't want to go to your Home Depot or anything like that and be getting boric acid. You have to make sure that you get food grade boric acid. So there's a theory, and I learned this a long time ago from a doctor in the Bronx, about what he would typically do is if people kept on coming back for BV, what he would do is, the theory is that when you take the antibiotic, whether it's the vaginal gel or the oral antibiotic, remember when I was talking to you about the microscope, and when we're looking under the microscope, when we see a bacterial infection, we see a cell and it's almost like an explosion. There's all the little dots on there, and that's a bacterial, all the bacteria on there. That when you take the antibiotic, it gets rid of a majority of that little bacteria, but then just a little bit is left on there. And then once you're done treating, the bacteria just starts growing all over again. And what he would do is he would use the boric acid, and what that would do is almost break down the walls of the bacteria. So he would have them take the boric acid before the antibiotic, and then he would tell them to take the antibiotic, and then after a week again to use it, because his theory is that, and I think it's a very good theory because I've done it with many patients and it's actually really helpful and successful. So you took the boric acid before to kind of break the walls of the bacteria. Then you took the antibiotic, which now, because the walls are kind of broken down, able to get rid of it completely. And then he would just have them do the boric acid a little bit after to also kind of prevent yeast infections as well. So it's definitely something, and sometimes even when people are having reoccurring vaginal infections, and BV, I keep saying vaginal infections, I don't mean to say that, but BV, again, just like with the probiotic, you have sex, typically even just the night after, you can go, oh my gosh, here I go, here I'm coming again. Just put a boric acid suppository up there and it'll go away. You kind of prevent it from even happening. And that's making boric suppositories that's another whole conversation. But if you want to have information on that, definitely reach out to me. So other things that you can do naturally is tea tree essential oil. The thing with tea tree essential oil is it can be very volatile, so you have to be very, very careful. There are, I know you can purchase over-the-counter ones that are already pre-made. If you're going to make your own, you dilute like 2 ounces, let's say, of olive oil. You need any kind of carrier oil, but olive oil tends to be a good one, and like 1 drop of tea tree oil. You really want to make sure it's diluted, because if it's too much, then it's going to burn your vagina, and that's not really what you want to happen. So you have to make sure that it's really diluted. Using now tea tree oil, I would just use on its own. You can also do thyme and oregano essential oil the same kind of way. Those are really good. And then if you don't have anything but you have garlic in your house, you can definitely take garlic cloves. You have a big garlic, and you take the 1 clove and you kind of like peel it a little bit, so like it's when you're going to cut the garlic, you get to that point, and then you just take that before you go to bed and you put it in as far as you can, and you leave it in overnight, and you do that for about 5 or 6 nights. Some people, they will take some thread, they'll take a needle and thread, and they'll, put a hole through the garlic and just have the strings down so that it'll be easy to kind of pull out the next day. Or some people even put it in gauze, and they kind of, so they could just, something's a little hanging out so they can pull it out. But garlic is really, really good. Sometimes I tell people about doing garlic and yogurt suppositories, like one night do garlic, one night do yogurt, like with active live cultures, and just going back and forth for about about 5 or 6 nights. And usually to do a yogurt suppository, I tell people to take a regular plain tampon and just soak it in the plain yogurt, not any flavors now, the plain yogurt, and you just let it soak up the yogurt, and then you put it in at night before you go to bed. And then let's see what else we got. I know I'm probably missing a lot of stuff here, because this is just really kind of basic information. BV, I never thought that, I talk about it all the time, BV, and there's so much to say about it. So hopefully I'm not missing anything. But anyway, so if you wanted to do like, I don't know, like, those peri-wash bottles, or even if you take a douching bottle, you can even, what you could do is you can make like a strong tea out of like lavender, calendula, and even yarrow or slippery elm. There's lots of different combinations that you can do. So you can either make a really strong tea, and then of course let it cool, and you could put it like in a douche bottle, and you can just, when you're in the shower, kind of douche and all how they come out. Or you can do what we call a peri-bottle wash, which is just taking a bottle with a squeeze top, and then just when you're in the shower, just trying to, spread in everything down there and just kind of squeezing it all down there. You can definitely do that. And then a longer process is literally taking like lavender, calendula, which is a beautiful flower, and like slippery elm, and actually like infusing olive oil in it, which is a very long process. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to actually infuse that, and then making suppositories. And I typically have people do it with coconut oil, because most people who work with coconut oil knows that if coconut oil is cold, it's solid, and if it's warm, it's liquid. So if you mix it with the olive oil, and you can even put a little beeswax in there, it's, to make it a little bit more solid, and you store that in the freezer, and and it's not going to freeze it, because a lot of times I tell people, listen, I'm going to have you make coconut suppositories, but you're going to put it in the freezer, and most people go, oh my God, like I'm not going to put that in my vagina. And I'm like, no, 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 it just makes coconut oil solid. It doesn't actually freeze it. And then you can use those kind of suppositories. And the thing with coconut oil is I tell people to use coconut oil for so many things. Coconut oil is amazing. It is antibacterial and it is antifungal. So even if you have coconut oil in your home and you wanted to, if you're having a bacterial infection and you're like, listen, let me just do something really kind of basic. If you take coconut oil, usually what I tell people is take a piece of saran wrap, take your coconut oil and make little dollops, just enough that if you think about what a suppository looks like, we've all seen suppositories just about that size, and then you just kind of fold the saran wrap over and you just make shape them into little suppositories. And then you take that little thing and you go right into your freezer and you leave it in the freezer. And then, whenever you want to put one in before you go to bed, you do that. The key things is, one, make sure absolutely that you put a towel underneath, because as much as you can put that suppository up in as far as you can, a little bit may come out, and you don't want to ruin your sheets. Coconut oil is great also for a natural lubricant as well. Aloe vera gel is good as well, but coconut oil, because a lot of women who are even postmenopausal and are having, I know that I had this conversation before on my other thing, but not even that you're necessarily having BV, but if you're having dryness with sexual relations, you can use coconut oil. Usually I tell people just to put, make a little tiny suppository and put it in a little bit before you, start having fun. And if you think about it, it melts pretty quickly. So it's not like, oh, I got to make sure I put my, vaginal coconut oil up there like a couple hours before. It melts pretty darn quickly. So that is another great thing to do for just vaginal dryness and lubricant while you're having sex. And it's antibacterial and it's antifungal. So if you are getting reoccurring vaginal vaginosis, this is a great way to prevent. Of course, that is if you're in a monogamous relationship and not using condoms, because remember, if you're using condoms, you should use no oil, because it's just going to eat away at the condom and it's no longer going to work and do what it's supposed to do. So only use coconut oil if you're in a monogamous relationship and you're not using condoms anymore. And that'll also help kind of prevent bacterial infections. If you have been diagnosed with a bacterial infection and you have been treated, I definitely 500% definitely get a vaginal probiotic to help build up the vaginal bacteria, the good bacteria in the vagina, so that to help you prevent. And also, even if you're in a long-term monogamous relationship, I would definitely use condoms as well, at least for a month, to help your body rebuild that good bacteria and not get exposed to, I don't want to say bad bacteria, because I don't want to say your partner's bad, but hopefully if you do that, your body will be able to build up enough good bacteria so that when you are exposed to them again, your vagina will be a lot more stronger. So I think that's about it when it comes to BV. I'm sure that I can talk longer and longer and longer about it. I see that Debbie was here tonight. Thank you so much, Debbie, for joining me tonight and sticking it out the whole time. I hope you enjoyed it. Anybody else who's watching this after, if you have any questions, please make sure that you post them below. Or if you have even more in-depth, want an in-depth conversation, or you want treatment or anything, make sure to go to womenshealthonthego.com and book an appointment with me. And if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, make sure that you do. I send out a newsletter once a month with lots of great health tips and information. You just got to go to onthego.com/subscribe. I will put the link up above, but make sure that you definitely sign up for that newsletter. I've been enjoying it. My next one is actually going to be coming out in a week. I try to send it out mid-month, so I've got a lot of great things on there, and I got a video and stuff, so I'm really excited about that. Again, thank you for joining me. I'm not quite sure what we'll be discussing next week, but if you have a topic that you want to be, want me to answer your questions, please either comment below, email me from my website, reach out to me via, my Facebook page, whatever. I would love topics. I am going to be having some guests coming up. I'm trying to arrange. I got 3 of them that I'm going to be having, just talking about natural ways to take care of ourselves. Because women's health matters. We matter, and we have to make sure that we take care of ourselves in this crazy world that we're living in. So, and I'm very passionate about that. So, let's start taking care of ourselves. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. And again, thank you, Debbie, so much for hanging out with me tonight. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.